guys! Hope you guys are all doing well. Welcome back. I haven't posted since my first video in February, which is not what I intended to happen. I was like, I have so much time this semester, so I'm gonna start a whole YouTube channel and it's gonna be so fun, a little project for me to fill up all the time that I could be spending working. I don't have a job, so maybe I'll just start a YouTube channel. And then I had zero time. And every time I sat down to try and film a video, something would happen or go wrong, and it was really, really aggravating. And so I think today is the perfect day. I don't think anything is gonna go wrong. Hopefully. We'll see. But the last time I filmed, or the last time I tried to film like I tried to film this video basically a couple weeks ago. And I woke up that morning not really feeling good. I had a cold, but I was like, whatever, it's just a cold. I'll be fine. So I filmed the video and I go to like edit it. I download it to my laptop and everything. And none of it was in focus. Not a single part was in focus, and I think my mic died. I don't know, something else happened, and then by the time I had like figured that out, because that was like after a couple hours, it took so long. I was feeling even worse, and I was like, okay, I guess I won't be filming. And then like I had like 2 essays due, and then my boyfriend came visit, and it was just like a whole lot of things that were not working out. But that's okay. Things happen. And here we are now. Thank you for being here. Hello, my friends. Anyway, without further ado, these are all the books I read in March. Started off strong. I started off with a book that was on the long list, or I think it was the short list for the Booker Prize. I don't really remember, but called The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran by Shida Bazyar. This book was so beautiful, and I think I really enjoyed it because it just hit so close to home. And it was like, you know, it takes place in Iran, and I'm not Iranian, I'm Lebanese Armenian, but we have so many similarities, and with all the things that were happening in the country, it was very similar to Lebanon. And it was just a really beautiful story. I had a really good time reading it. I think I cried a couple times. Not because it was necessarily super tragic. That's the thing. It wasn't like super tragic. It was just about how their family was able to overcome so much and the relationships that they had with each other that I thought were really beautiful. 1979. Besad, a young communist revolutionary, fights with his friends for a new order after the Shah's expulsion. He tells of sparking hope, of clandestine political actions, and of how he finds the love of his life in the courageous, intelligent Nahid. 1989. Nahid lives her new life in West Germany with Besad. With their young children, they spend hour after hour in front of the radio, hoping for news from others who went into hiding after the mullahs came to power. 1999. Lale returns to Iran with her mother Nahid. Between beauty rituals and family secrets, she gets to know a Tehran that hardly matches her childhood memories. 2009. Lale's brother Mo is more concerned with a friend's heartbreak than with student demonstrations in Germany. But then the Green Revolution breaks out in Iran and turns the world upside down. A topical moving novel about revolution, oppression, resistance, and the absolute desire for freedom. I mean, this book was exactly that. It was the perfect demonstration of the experience of having to immigrate from a country that you were trying to fight so hard for and trying to live in. Because that's the thing, these things are born from a love from the country that you come from and a wish for it to get better. And their experience having to move to Germany and their experiences in Germany as Iranian immigrants are so telling. It was just a really beautiful story. Highly recommend. I mean, it was on the short list for the Booker Prize for a reason. So highly recommend. The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran. The next book I read was so good. So good. Sapphic Irish romance from the 1990s, or set in the 1990s. Oh god, it was just so beautiful. I loved it. In the early 1990s, and in the Irish village of Crossmore, Lucy feels out of place. Despite her fierce friendships, she's always felt this way, and the conventional path of marriage and motherhood doesn't appeal to her at all. Not even with the handsome and doting Martin, her closest childhood friend. Lucy begins to make sense of herself during a long, hot summer, when a spark with her school friend Susanna escalates to an all-consuming infatuation, and very quickly to a desperate and devastating love. Fearful of rejection from her small and conservative community, Lucy begins living a double life, hiding the most honest parts of herself in stolen moments with Susanna. But with the end of school and the opportunity to leave Crossmore looming, Lucy must choose between two places, two people, and two futures, each as terrifying as the other. But only one can offer her real happiness. Sunburn is an astute and tender portrayal of first love, adolescent anxiety, and the realities of growing up in a small town where tradition holds people tightly in its grasp. So, yeah, I mean, just a beautiful story about coming of age as a lesbian in Ireland during a time where, I mean, I'm sure it is still like this in small Irish towns where everyone is sort of in denial and not really acknowledging that this thing exists, because Lucy also has to deal with how her family perceives her and her kind of role within the space within her friend groups and within her family dynamic. And I think it's just really beautifully told, very accurate to the feeling of being in love with like a best friend, or being in love with a woman for the first time, or realizing that you are attracted to women for the first time. Just the process of how to process those feelings. A really beautiful novel. Highly recommend Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. The next book I read, kind of a disappointment a little bit. I just feel like, okay, first of all, it's young adult fantasy, and I like young adult fantasy. I have nothing against young adult books, especially. I'm absolutely not one of those people who think that young adult books are only for young adults, and I can enjoy young adult books usually. This one just like didn't hit the mark. I think it sort of fell flat for me. That is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. Also, more of a disappointment because I had been waiting for years to read Brandon Sanderson, but I just like didn't know where to start. I have Mistborn sitting on my shelf. It's been on my shelf for at least 2 years, and I will get to it soon. It's just, he's one of those authors who has such a ginormous collection. I didn't know where to start, but it seemed like Tress of the Emerald Sea was a pretty good place to start, and there's an ambulance. And I think Tress of the Emerald Sea was a really good place to start. I just didn't love it. It was only okay. The only life Tress has known on her island home in an emerald green ocean has been a simple one, with the simple pleasures of collecting cups brought by sailors from faraway lands and listening to stories told by her friend Charlie. But when his father takes him on a voyage to find a bride and disaster strikes, Tress must stow away on a ship and seek the sorceress of the deadly Midnight Sea. Amid the spore oceans where pirates abound, can Tress leave her simple life behind and make her own place sailing a sea where a single drop of water can mean instant death? There were a few ideas that I really appreciated. I really appreciated the creativity of figuring out a world where the oceans can kill you and they aren't made of water, and a place that can survive without water, which is really funny because I read okay, we'll get to that later. The next book I read also deals with like kind of a similar premise of not needing water to live, if you catch my drift. I think it was the relationship between Tress and Charlie. I think it opened really nicely. It opened with Charlie telling Tress a story on their island, and I thought that their dynamic was at first kind of cute. And like, I think it was cute that Charlie was technically in the position of power because his father was like the duke or something, and Tress was just this poor peasant girl kind of thing, and he was pretending to like not be the son of the duke. But I just like could not find an attachment to them. I didn't fully believe in their relationship, and so much of the novel was Tress with this group of pirates, and I like the attention to figuring out how their relationships all worked with each other and like how they grew. I just like, I don't know, I think the climax was a little bit underwhelming. I don't know, there are just so many parts that were underwhelming, but I think it's because I had higher expectations and I was expecting more out of this kind of story. But honestly, if you are into young adult fantasy and stories that aren't necessarily like super high stakes, or it was high stakes, I think it was supposed to be meant as being high stakes, but I just didn't really believe in it. You might give it a chance if you feel like it. That was Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. The next book I am so excited to talk about. It's the book everybody was thinking about for 2 months, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Weir? I don't know. Loki, sorry. I never know how to say that name. You know who I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is Project Hail Mary. Really solid, great book. I don't read a whole lot of sci-fi. It's just not my cup of tea. I'm more into like high fantasy kind of thing if I were to read that kind of genre fiction. But super solid book. I loved it. It's a 5-star read for me. Without further ado, if you somehow don't know what this book is about, Ryland Grace is the sole survivor on a desperate last chance mission, and if he fails, humanity and the earth itself will perish. Except that right now, he doesn't know that. He can't even remember his own name, let alone the nature of his assignment or how to complete it. All he knows is that he's been asleep for a very, very long time, and he's just been awakened to find himself millions of miles from home with nothing but 2 corpses for company. His crewmates dead, his memories fuzzily returning, Rylan realizes that an impossible task now confronts him. Hurtling through space on this tiny ship, it's up to him to puzzle out an impossible scientific mystery and conquer an extinction-level threat to our species. And with the clock ticking down and the nearest human being light years away, he's got to do it all alone. Or does he? I'm gonna try not to spoil any of this, but I feel like the big spoiler happens like a quarter of the way into the novel, and honestly the real enjoyment comes from the dialogue, Ryland's dialogue in his own head. I think it is super fun, and I will say, although I love the movie, I thought it was amazing, I just feel like, see, here's the thing, I know that movie adaptations are always going to be a little bit unfulfilling because they have to leave stuff out. Like, it's not a TV show where they have like hours and hours and hours worth of things to build on. It's a movie, it's a 3-hour long movie where they have to cut things out. I just have personal preferences. So it's my personal preference that the first part of the book where he's waking up and he's like figuring out what is going on is some of the joy. I had such a joyful time reading that section of the book, and I just wish that they had included that in the movie. Although I still believe it was really well done and I really liked it and blah blah blah. We're not here to talk about the movie, we're here to talk about the book. And I think that the book was also amazing. I love the book. It was super fun for me to read all of the scientific jargon language kind of stuff because like my boyfriend understood a lot of it because it was like a lot of physics. I obviously didn't understand what the hell he was talking about, but I had such a fun time reading it because it felt like I was reading it through the lens of like a magic system in a fantasy world where like, yeah, these are the rules of the world. I don't fully understand them because they aren't the rules of our world, even though like it is. I just like it's literally not of my field. So I don't understand it, but I still had a fun time reading it. Like, it was presented in a very accessible way and I loved it. So if you somehow haven't read it, go read Project Hail Mary. You will get a lot of joy out of it. The next book I read has also been sitting on my shelf since, I'm gonna say, senior year of high school. Or maybe like freshman year of college. So like 3 or 4 years. I don't know. I just feel like it was gonna be a way bigger commitment to read than it actually was. And so I avoided picking it up for the longest time. But I had recently seen that the show version recently wrapped up, and I had stopped keeping up with the show a long time ago because it just got a little bit too ridiculous. Again, not here to talk about the show. We're here to talk about Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. I really should look up how to say these last names before I start the video. But Outlander was a very sensational show mostly in the UK, and Americans who are obsessed with Scotland and the UK. The year is 1945. Claire Randall, a former combat nurse, is just back from the war and reunited with her husband on a second honeymoon when she walks through a standing stone in one of the ancient circles that dot the British Isles. Suddenly, she is a Sassenach, an outlander, in a Scotland torn by war and raiding border clans in the year of our Lord, 1743. Hurled back in time by forces she cannot understand, Claire is catapulted into the intrigues of lairs and spies that may threaten her life and shatter her heart. For here, James Fraser, a gallant young Scots warrior, shows her a love so absolute that Claire becomes a woman torn between fidelity and desire, in between 2 vastly different men in 2 irreconcilable lives. I really enjoyed myself. It just had classic 90s-esque kind of problematic romance. However, once you get past that part and you're like, okay, this was written in a different time where certain things were okay, and like, especially because certain events took place in a different time, it was like fine. However, if you are sensitive to certain things and descriptions of certain things, namely essay kind of events, definitely avoid, because the last like third of the novel is all about like a certain experience that James Fraser had, and so it's just like that just wasn't great. I knew it was coming because I saw the show and they did not shy away from all of that. It was still a great read. I had a good time reading it. I love 90s romances because I think I talked about this in my last video about like the new contemporary romances, but I don't like the way that the smut is portrayed, because I don't really like smut. It has to be done a very, very specific way for me to actually get super interested in it, if you know what I mean. And I can't even describe what that way is. It either hits the mark or it doesn't for me. But I really appreciated how this book was way less smutty than I thought it was going to be. Because the show is very, very graphic in all sorts of different ways. It shows everything. And like, they have sex a lot. They have sex a lot in the show, and they have sex a lot in the book. The book does cut to black a lot more, which I actually prefer. I know a lot of people don't like that, but sometimes I don't want to read about a graphic sex scene every 3 pages. Like, I don't want to. And while there were a lot of sex scenes, it was so easy for me to get through because it was not like insanely graphic. So I really appreciated that. Thank you, Diana. It makes me want to read a lot more 90s romances. This is like the blueprint, you know? You gotta read it. I think I might read the rest of the series. I wasn't dying to get like the second or the third book because I read this like 3 weeks ago now, and like I might pick up the second or third book if I happen upon it at like a thrift store or something, but I have other things I want to read in the meantime, so I might just take a little break from Outlander. That was Outlander. And I started one more book in March, but I finished it in April, so I probably will do an April reading wrap up where I will talk about this book fully, but I will preface by saying this is now in my maybe five. I was gonna say top 10 books of all time, but like maybe five, maybe top 5 books of all time. That's what I have found it usually is for people, and I had very high expectations when going into it. So that brings us to East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and I'm pretty sure this is regarded as his like greatest work of all time, like better than Grapes of Wrath, better than Of Mice and Men, 2 books that I also love. And you know what, I think I might read those too soon because I have put myself in a huge John Steinbeck phase. And I really am biased because I grew up in California and I grew up in a family that loved to road trip around California. And I started reading East of Eden on the Amtrak back from Los Angeles to Berkeley. I was taking a 12-hour Amtrak ride from Los Angeles to Berkeley. And so I read Outlander I finished it within the first 2 or 3 hours because I had started it before, like a few days prior to the train ride. And so I started East of Eden a couple hours into the train ride, and I finished it a few days later in April, because that was at the end of March. It was so beautiful to start reading as I was going through Salinas, because it takes place in Salinas, California, and so he's describing the Salinas Valley and all of these places that I was literally seeing with my own eyes. I was seeing these farms, I was seeing this community, and I was seeing the rolling hills, and it hit so good. Like, I was in the best possible position to start reading this as I started reading it. So if you're ever on the Amtrak going from NorCal to SoCal and you're like going through these places, highly recommend starting East of Eden because God, truly such a beautiful book. I'll talk about the summary and all of that in my April reading wrap up, and I'm really excited to talk about it. I've been telling everybody to read this book, so if you also somehow haven't read it, read East of Eden. And if you don't believe me, stay tuned for the April reading wrap up where I will talk more about it. So, yeah, overall, I read not too many books in March. I read a lot of books for class, and so I think what I'll do at the end of the semester is make like a full what I read as a UC Berkeley English student type of video kind of thing. I'm trying not to talk about the books that I read for class because I don't want it to get repetitive. And also, I don't like a lot of the books that I'm reading for class, if I'm being honest. I have some footage from when I started reading Project Hail Mary, because I also read it on the train going down from Berkeley to Los Angeles. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Maybe for a little life update, I did get sick once in March and once a week ago. Had my spring break in March. Didn't read as much as I wanted to just because I was working a lot and I was seeing my friends a lot. Hi guys. My boyfriend came to visit this past weekend. I dropped him off at the airport yesterday, so that was very sad. I miss him. Anthony, if you're watching this, I miss you. Yeah, I mean, read lots of good books in March. Actually, I think March had my first 5-star reads of the year. Wow. Yeah, it took until March for me to have a 5-star read, and that was for The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran. Beautiful book. I always have such a hard time reading books on Goodreads, and you know, if you're a Goodreads user, and especially if you're not a Goodreads user and you use like Storygraph or something, you know that Goodreads comes with its faults, and it's owned by Amazon. So that kind of sucks. But I just like have so many books on here for the past few years, and I just don't feel like transferring everything yet. I think I will eventually. Anyway, yeah, follow my Goodreads if you don't already. I love to scroll and see what people are reading. That's the thing. I love seeing the community on there and like what all my friends are reading. I have such a good time reading their reviews of books. Follow my Instagram. Maybe eventually, when this becomes a more serious thing, I will start actually taking care of my Instagram more and posting about books more. I gotta start doing that just as is. Thank you for joining me. Those were all of the books that I read in March. Bye!